With the War for Independence, America had successfully broken free from Britain. Yet 3 decades after the war, the British loomed large as a persistent and aggressive menace to the new republic. On June 1, 1812, President James Madison asked Congress to declare war. The House of Representatives voted 79 to 49 in favor of war, with the Senate following suit with a vote of 19 to 13. On June 18th, Madison signed the declaration into law. It was the first time America had officially declared war on another nation. It would prove to be the Second War of Independence. Leading up to the War of 1812, the British made 3 major moves of aggression against their former subjects. They blockaded American commercial ships. The British Navy boarded American ships, seized crew members, and pressed them into service. And the British supplied arms to Chief Tecumseh and his confederation of native tribes, who were determined to resist American settlers in the Northwest Territory. American defeats came early in the war. On July 12th, General William Hull and his forces failed in their attempt to invade Canada from Detroit. On July 17th, Fort Michilimackinac surrendered to British Canadian forces. A few weeks later, Detroit fell to the British. The first good news came on August 19th when the USS Constitution defeated the HMS Guerriere in a battle on the open sea, about 400 miles southeast of Nova Scotia. That victory earned the American ship its permanent nickname, Old Ironsides. During the war, American invasions of Canada were largely unsuccessful. 2 exceptions were the battles of York and the Thames. York was the capital of Ontario. The battle there on April 27, 1813, was an easy win for General Zebulon Pike and his men, but it proved costly. As the British retreated, they set fire to a gunpowder magazine. When the fire reached the hundreds of powder kegs, a powerful explosion tore through the Americans and wounded or killed over 200 men, including General Pike. Angry American soldiers set fire to businesses and public buildings. On September 10th, Admiral Oliver Hazard Perry led 9 American ships in a victory over the British fleet in the Battle of Lake Erie. The Americans now controlled the Great Lake and the supply line for American forces. They would retake Detroit by the end of the month. In the Battle of the Thames in October that year, American General William Henry Harrison led the victorious American forces. Chief Tecumseh, who had been elevated to brigadier general by the British, died there. One of the fiercest battles of the war occurred on July 25, 1814, the Battle of Lundy's Lane in Ontario. General Winfield Scott led 2,500 Americans to a draw with the 3,500 British, commanded by General Gordon Drummond. Almost 30% of all the soldiers who fought that day were injured or killed. Both generals suffered serious wounds. In mid-August 1814, the British launched an invasion of Maryland. Their target, America's capital. On August 24th, General Robert Ross and his army of seasoned war veterans roundly defeated the 6,500 Americans commanded by General William Winder. Later that day, Ross and his army easily took Washington, D.C. With the burning of York in their memories, they set the majority of federal buildings on fire, including the U.S. Capitol and the White House. Before they arrived at the president's home, First Lady Dolly Madison had Gilbert Stuart's life-size portrait of George Washington removed to safekeeping. She did not want it destroyed by fire, but even more than that, she did not want it in the hands of the British, and in fact, gave instructions for it to be destroyed were the British to come close to capturing it. After vanquishing the District of Columbia, the British set their sights on Baltimore. Because of its bustling commercial port and strategic location, the city was even more important than the nation's capital. In the early morning of September 13, 1814, British forces under the command of Admiral Alexander Cochrane began bombarding Fort McHenry. The attack went on for 25 hours, but the Americans prevailed. The British forces had been repulsed. The scene on the morning of September 14th, when the Americans raised their 30 by 42-foot garrison flag, inspired Francis Scott Key to write the Star Spangled Banner. The victory of Baltimore proved a turning point in the war. By late 1814, both sides sought peace. The Americans and British signed the Treaty of Ghent on Christmas Eve. The most famous battle of the war, however, occurred after the treaty was signed, on January 8, 1815. In the Battle of New Orleans, General Andrew Jackson and 5,700 American troops defended the city from a fortified mud and cotton bale earthworks on the east bank of the Mississippi River. British General Edward Pakenham led 8,000 veteran troops in a forward assault. In less than 30 minutes, 2,000 of the British fell wounded or dead. Pakenham himself died from American rifle fire. One soldier from Kentucky wrote of what he saw in the aftermath of the Battle of New Orleans. When the smoke had cleared and we could obtain a fair view of the field, it looked at first glance like a sea of blood. It was not blood itself, but the red coats in which the British soldiers were dressed. The field was entirely covered in prostrate bodies. So ended America's second war for independence.